Over the last few weeks, we have seen numerous job losses being announced by the media companies. All the orthodox media companies in Kenya have announced reduction in their staff. In other words, they've announced redundancies for most of their staff. They're saying that they will fire or sack or reduce their staff levels significantly. And so many of the leading journalists in Kenya have been fired. Not due to anything that they did that was wrong, it's just that the economic situation has turned very, very negatively against our legacy media companies, and they're being forced to retrench and to reduce their staff. So what has gone wrong? Why now? Why not 5 years ago? I thought the economy is much larger than 5 years ago, that the advertising spend is much higher than 5 or 10 years ago. So why would they begin to retrench across the industry? What is going on in this industry? Well, this is what happened. In 2020, there was the start of the pandemic. Now, we all know that that's a very controversial topic, because if you're living in Kenya or in Africa, you never saw anything. The minute you switched off the TV and went outside, there was nothing. But when you went back to the house and switched on the TV, they were all declaring that there was a pandemic. And they were declaring that everyone will die. And they were fear-mongering. Every 5 minutes, they will tell you X number of people are infected, X number of people have died. Why did the Kenyan media fear-monger so much? You need to understand that Kenyan media is not Kenyan-owned. It is owned by foreigners. And the Kenyans who work there work for foreign interest directly. These are the coconuts. They control everything in Kenya, and they also control the media. So these coconuts, they are known as the comprado bourgeoisie in Marxist literature, but I just call them coconuts. These are the Africans who are brown on the outside, but fully Mzungu on the inside. So basically, when you're talking to them, you're talking to a Mzungu, and they feel that the values of the West are their own values, that the interests of the West are their own interests. So whatever the West comes up with, they will implement. Whatever the West is pushing, they'll be happy to push it in Kenya. And we've seen this across board. We've seen this. We've seen the media and the entertainment industry pushing Western perversions on us consistently. And these perversions are not necessarily popular, but they consistently push these perversions. When you switch on Kenyan TV, it's nothing but Western perversion. Every single thing that is disgusting, immoral, satanic, unacceptable, anti our culture, their media will push it on us, down our throats, down our children's throats. And it's very difficult to stop this, because it is the other coconuts who also control the government and control the parliament. So the erosion of African culture has been literally orchestrated by the coconuts that rule over us, specifically the media. And we have very little input in what they do. And people keep on complaining about the garbage that they show on TV. And we are like, why are you showing us this all this rubbish on TV? Why? What's your motivation? Their motivation is very simple. They are here to implement the Western agenda. Now, given that that is their history, so the media in Kenya is used for social engineering. And they're trying to create a new society. They're trying to break the bonds of family. They're trying to break the bonds of traditional African morality. And they are largely succeeding, because everything, all these people that they make famous, and you know, normally they make the prostitutes, the whores, and the sluts very famous. If a woman takes off her clothes, they will make her extremely famous. But any other person doing something positive, they will not ever mention them. So the characters that they choose to make famous follows a particular pattern that is designed. If you study it long enough, you'll see it's designed to accomplish the collapse of the family. So basically what they want is to atomize the society, because for the next step of the agenda, if you know what the agenda is, you must atomize the society. You must break the bonds that people have with each other. And the family is a very strong unit, and it's very resistant to many of the things that the West is trying to introduce into Africa. So you have to collapse the family. So the fact that you're seeing that the divorce rate has shot up, this is clearly the result of social engineering for the last 20 years, in conjunction with the Freemasons that have been ruling Kenya for a very long time. Many people think that Kenya is ruled by Christians. There are no Christians in government. There are no Christians in parliament. There are no Christians controlling the media. It's the Freemasons who are in charge. Those who worship the serpent and give offerings to demons also rule Kenya. And so a lot of the things that happen are intended policy. These are not mistakes by the government. These are not things that they overlook. This is the policy. You understand? This is the policy. In Kenya, there's the rise of something called socialite. This is government policy. You understand? And it has led to a tremendous breakdown in the family, in marriages in Kenya. Because the women who are being set up as the examples for the rest of the young girls to follow are anti-family, anti-morality, anti-God, anti-anything positive. You understand? This is intentional government policy. Don't be deceived by the Bibles that they carry. People are like, oh, these people, these politicians, they all carry Bibles. They're all Christians. They don't carry the Bible because they love the God that is inside the Bible. They carry the Bible because they love the serpent that is inside the Bible. You must understand, there are no Christians ruling Kenya. It's the wicked who have power. Evil is in charge. So let's go back to the story of the media. Now the media, given that is their background, right? Pushing Western values on us all the time. And Western values are actual non-values. It's very nihilistic, right? So they started pushing the pandemic fear-mongering, right? They started pushing the pandemic fear-mongering because those were the instructions from the West. Push this fear and push the people to accept the chanjo. Okay? Because the chanjo, that is a whole other story on its own, and we won't go there. So we remember in those years, 2020, 2021, Magufuli, the president of Tanzania, was very resistant to what the West was pushing. And he plainly said, no, we will not impose any lockdown at any time for any reason. And in fact, he encouraged his population, do not be afraid. Don't fall for the propaganda. Don't be afraid. These people have an agenda. And the Kenyan media condemned Magufuli. Every day they mocked him, they challenged him, they insulted him, and they wished him every evil. Right? They called him irresponsible. They called him someone who's spreading disinformation. Because disinformation is contradicting the Mzungu. Because the Mzungu is information. Right? So if you have an opinion that is different from the West or from the Mzungu, then that's disinformation. Right? They called him a liar. Why? Because the Mzungu is the truth. So if you contradict the Mzungu, well, then you're a liar. Right? So you have to accept everything that the West is saying. The West is saying in those days that all of you Africans will die. I remember there was an American billionaire who sent a message to Africa that all of you will die unless you take the chanjo, that you'll be falling on the streets. But Magufuli showed up and said, no, don't be afraid. It will not happen. And so the Kenyan media was on the side of the Mzungu, right? And against Magufuli. And we know that the political elite of Kenya is always on the side of the Mzungu. That is without question. So the media really pushed against Magufuli, right? Because he said, no lockdown. Continue living your lives as normal. If you get sick, go to the hospital. So in Kenya, the lockdown was imposed. And from the day it was imposed, the economy went into a tailspin. We were done. In fact, we lost all our growth. We were averaging at about 5 to 7% growth per annum, which is very good. But after President Uhuru imposed the lockdown in obedience to his foreign masters, the economy immediately showed negative growth. We moved from positive 5 to 7% to negative 2-3%. What that means is an economic contraction. It means that jobs will be lost, incomes will be lost, businesses will be closed, people will begin to suffer, they'll begin to go hungry. Now, the effects of those sort of economic shenanigans are not felt immediately. They are felt 2 to 10 years after whatever happened. Now we are beginning in Kenya to experience the effects of that lockdown, right? Because so many businesses were disrupted when Uhuru imposed a lockdown and a curfew on Kenya, which was ridiculous because the argument was the virus travels during the day, but it doesn't travel during the night. Total outrageous, And that kind of power should be taken away from the government. They should never have the power to impose any kind of lockdown for any whatsoever. And so today in Kenya, we're experiencing what is called a recession. The economy has contracted so much and it's refusing to grow again because of the other after effects of the oil shock, the price going up, and the after effects of so many people closing down their businesses over the last 2 years. So it's snowballing slowly by slowly. So what is interesting that is happening today is that the effects of recession have finally reached the media houses that were pushing for lockdown. And they never thought that they would be affected. You know, they thought they were sitting in an ivory tower looking down on us, demanding that the economy be sabotaged through lockdown because that's what the Mzungu has said. Now, the effects of that have reached them and they're all getting fired. And it fills me with great pleasure to think that the very same coconuts in the media that were pushing for lockdown have finally been affected by the effects of that lockdown. That the monster they created has finally eaten them up.